Welcome back. Now that we understand how the metadata replication works in this lesson, we are going to put our learnings into practice. We're going to take some real data and process that using Spark Pool. We will take trip data that we have in our Silver layer. We will perform some aggregations to that data and then create a Spark table with the aggregated output in our Gold layer. This will write the output files to the Azure Data Lake as well as create the Spark table. Once we've created this Spark table in the Spark Pool, we'll look to see whether the table has been replicated to Serverless SQL Pool, and we're able to access that. As you can see in the diagram, we'll be clear in the table. Trip data green underscore ag in the database NYC taxi LDW Spark in our Spark Pool, and we would expect that table to appear under the DBO schema in the Serverless SQL Pool. This will not only demonstrate the integration between Spark Pool and the Serverless SQL Pool, but also show us how easy it is to write Spark programs for these kind of transformations on partitioned data compared to Serverless SQL Pool. Let's get started. Here we are in the Synapse Studio, and I am in the Developer Hub. As I said before, we are not going to focus on learning about Spark. That's not the objective of this course. The objective of this section of the course is to focus on the integration between Synapse Serverless SQL Pool and the Spark Pool. So I've already got a notebook which will speed up our process. So I'm going to just import that. I'm going to make this notebook available for you in the course under the Resources section as well. So you can just import it and work on that. And as you can see, it's an IPython notebook. So I'm going to just quickly import that. And we've got the notebook available here. And as we did before, we need to attach this to the pool. So it is our Learn Spark Pool and the language PySpark. Everything here is written in Python. I've got a couple of SQL statements. For that I've used a magic command. So let me walk you through, as we did before. I've got a bit of Markdown. It explains what the notebook is going to do. So it's going to do aggregations based on year, month, pickup location, and drop-off location, aggregate. It aggregates the data to derive these columns. So it will be total trip count, total fare amount. So all that's going to be in the final output is the 6th column. So you've got the year, month pickup location, and drop-up location. And then against that you're going to see that total trip count and total fare amount. So we're going to read the data from a Silver layer as we discussed previously, which is in Parquet format. And we're going to do the aggregations and write the data into our Gold layer. But when we write the data, we're also going to partition our outputs as well. So let me go down, and the first cell, what we got here is just a few variable declarations. I've got all the folder parts for brown, silver, and gold. Let me execute that. I'm going to do a cell at a time so that I can walk it through, look at the outputs, and then we can discuss them. So this is going to take a couple of minutes, as you can see, because we are starting the session up here. So while that's running, let's talk about the next cell. So here we are doing a Spark configuration setting. What happens normally is when you are reading data from partitioned folders, Spark tries to infer the data types. I don't want that to happen because we got a year and month. I've defined our month to be a string, so you've got 0, 1 rather than just 1. But if you let Spark read that data, it's going to read it as an integer 1. I don't want that to happen. That's why I've just disabled that feature by setting this bar configuration here. So let me run that as well. So when this session is up and running, that's going to run as well. So let's wait for these two statements to complete and then we'll talk about the next one. So our session is ready and the two cells have now completed execution successfully as well, as you can see here. So let's talk about the third one. So this is where we are in the database. So we need a database to hold our table, and we've come up with a new name called NYC_taxi_LDW_Spark. We couldn't use the NYC taxi LDW because it already exists in our Serverless SQL Pool. So we want to give it a new name. So I have just suffixed it with _Spark, and the primary location or the default location for the database is going to be our Gold folder. So let me execute that. When I execute this, it's going to create the database in Spark as well as the replication should happen, and we should be able to see that database in our Serverless SQL Pool as well. So let me execute this first. So that cell has now completed. So we've got a database called NYC taxi LDW Spark in our Spark Pool. But we should see a similar database in our serverless SQL pool as well. So let's go over to the Data Hub. In Data Hub, we've got the SQL database, but that database would exist in another tab called Linked Database. We're not seeing that at the moment, so we need to refresh this screen. But before we refresh it, we'll have to publish it. Otherwise, we are going to lose the change. So I'm going to just click on Publish All and click Publish. And once that's published, we can just refresh the screen here. So the publishing is complete now. So let me click on the refresh and we should see the database. As you can see, we got a separate tab called Lake Database, and under that we've got the NYC Taxi LDW Spark as well. And that's the one we want, that there must be no tables and view because we haven't created any, but we will be creating them and they'll come through as well. So let me walk you through the rest of the notebook. So what we have done here is reading the file. So from the silver folder path, we're reading the trip data green file. So we have, as you know, we have got the data in our silver layer, which is in Parquet format. So we're reading that into a data frame. And once we've got that data in our data frame, we are doing some aggregations. Our requirement is to aggregate based on year, month, PU_location_ID, DO_location ID, which is pick up and drop off. And we wanted to get aggregates to get the total trip count and the total fare amount. So these are the 6 columns we are interested in. So this will get that information, and the next cell here is going to write that data to our data lake in a table. As you can see here, we are saved this as table in our database, which is the new database. We've created here called NYC Taxi Database part and the output table. We've named that as Trip Data Green AG. So that's the table which is going to be created. But as you know, this database has got a default location of our gold layer. So that data is going to be under that storage location, and we're going to have the table as well. So let me execute these 3 commands. So the data is now being written. You can look at the job execution progress, and you can open the Spark UI and all of that kind of stuff. The cell has successfully completed, and as you can see, it has completed all the tasks as well. So because we have written the data to our Go layer and we partitioned the data by year and month and the format of the file is back, what you're going to see is in our gold layer, we're going to have a folder with this name. And within that, you're going to have the folders with the year and the month, and under that, you're going to see the Parquet file. So let's look at that first before we turn our attention to the table. So let me go over to the Data Hub and let's go over to our default storage, because that's where we have been writing our data. And we're in our gold layer. As you can see, we've got a new folder called Trip Data Green AG. And as you can see, we got a nicely formatted folder named year 2020 and month 01. And we've got all the Parquet files. We've got a number of files that because of all the parallel processing that happened. So as you can see, all we had to write is one statement here to partition the data and write the data in Parquet format. And we ended up having all the folders and the files as we expected to see. So it's quite powerful that way. So if you have any kind of complicated processing, instead of doing that in Serverless SQL pool, you may want to come into the Spark pool and do that processing because it's better suited for that. And let's now talk about the table. As we said, we've created a table here called Trip Data Green AG in our Spark pool, and we should see that in our Lake database here. And we should be able to query that using the Serverless SQL pool as well. So let me refresh tables here, and we've seen the table here. As you can see, we've got the Trip Data Green AG, and now the interesting thing is, can we query this table directly from Serverless SQL pool? And the answer is yes. So if you click on New SQL Script and select Top 100 Rows, and now we are connecting to the built-in pool, which is the Serverless SQL pool. So we created all our data using the Spark pool. We are going to query that using the Serverless SQL pool. When you're querying, we have to use the DBO schema using Serverless SQL pool. And we got the table name here as well. So let me run the query, and we should see the outputs as we expect to see the 6 columns here and the aggregated values. So we've got the location ID, DO location ID, year and month, and they come from the folder path. And they're at the end. And we've got the aggregated values here as well. So that's great. As you can see, the integration is really seamless. You create your data using this Spark pool and you can query them from the Serverless SQL pool. The main advantage is once you are able to query that from Server SQL pool, you can use T-SQL to query that data, and also you can hook up a Power BI report to query that data from a Serverless SQL pool and report from there as well. So it is quite a sophisticated solution thanks to the integration between Spark Pool and Serverless SQL pool. And that's the end of this session. I'll see you in the next one.